I attempted a Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Pokemon that begin with the letter P. Any Pokemon species that begins with the letter P is fair game, which means I can finally use the most well-known, iconic Pokemon ever created. That's right, folks, I can finally use Probopass. I'll be attempting this challenge in Pokemon White 2, using the Hardcore Nuzlocke rules listed on screen now. I name myself P, which is appropriate, so I also give my rival an appropriate name. Yep, that's super appropriate. We start in Aspertia City, which frankly has a view that rivals Breath of the Wild. Here we meet Bianca, who had a major role in Pokemon White, but only has a few lines in this game. She basically got Jar Jar'd. Misa! Oh no, I'm not doing that. None of the starter Pokemon begin with the letter P. However, one Pokemon does evolve into a P Pokemon. That would be Tepig, who eventually becomes Pignite. My rules allow me to use both Tepig and Pignite, but it can never evolve into this big beefy boy. And that's because Emboar doesn't begin with the letter P. I name him Porkchop, but let's hope he never becomes fodder. For this challenge, I do get a total of 12 encounters, which is pretty nice. However, these encounters, how do I put this delicately? They suck. They super suck. White 2 is hard enough, so I've decided to only play on normal difficulty rather than challenge mode. Speaking of Pokemon that super suck, let's get our first 2 encounters, which is basically all the bad Pokemon at the beginning of the game. A Patrat named Pimento joins the squad, followed immediately after by Panther the Purloin. Sure, these Pokemon are bad, but at least they get early evolutions, right? Right. Into Pokemon I can't use. These 2 trash cans will stay their first evolution the entire game, but we welcome any help we can get in these letter locks. I can get another encounter in the Flockacy Ranch, but I actually want to delay this encounter until later. Unfortunately, repels are not available right now, and I'm forced to go through this grass for plot purposes. Thankfully, none of the Pokemon I run into begin with the letter P, so this encounter can be obtained later. For now, the P for Pathetic Squad rolls up to the first gym leader, Charon. Charon is one of the hardest first gyms in Pokemon, aside from Brock, who's infamously rock hard. Both of Charon's Pokemon know the move Work Up, which increases their attack. Thankfully, Porkchop can take out Patrat before it does too much damage. Lillipup is the scary one though. It goes for a Work Up as I fish for a burn through Ember. I'm not able to do that, but I am able to avoid a crit. This allows me to get one final Ember off, taking out Lillipup and getting me the first badge. Next, I make my way to Verbank City, where the second gym leader lives. Wait, no, gym leaders don't live in their gyms. But, where do they live? If you know where gym leaders live, let me know in the comments, or let me know what your favorite P Pokemon is. And of course, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks! Just below the city, in the Verbank complex, we can find Pidove, another early route Pokemon. It's crazy how many of these first stagers start with the letter P, but it's about to get crazier. Now that we have Partridge the Pidove, we can go back to Flockacy Ranch. Pidove is also found here, and by catching one earlier, any Pidoves we find don't count as our encounter. That means we're guaranteed to catch a Psyduck, who I name Pita. You know, 'cause ducks like bread. You know how ducks classically enjoy pita bread. By doing this encounter routing, we can get 4 early game Pokemon. Of course, none of them are able to evolve any further. Porkchop is allowed to evolve though, and we get Pignite now, who has fairly decent base stats, giving us at least 1 strong Pokemon. We also get access to fighting type moves. However, these won't be super helpful against the next gym leader, Roxy, and her poison types. Thankfully, we do have a Pokemon with super effective moves, as Pita learns the move Confusion just before this gym's level cap. Confusion is a 2-hit KO against Coughing, and it stays safe even against an Assurance crit. One more Confusion takes out the Poisonous Blob. Roxy's ace is Whirlipede, Pokemon's answer to the question, what if a bug could squish you? Pita does some chunk damage with Confusion and stays in to safely take a Venoshock. We're in crit range now, so I switch over to Porkchop, who tanks a very weak Poison Sting. It doesn't get the 30% poison chance, but someone should tell Roxy, because she goes for Protect the next turn anyway. Because of Whirlipede's secondary bug typing, it falls to just 1 Flame Charge from Porkchop. and the second badge is now ours. Now we have the fun job of clicking A through the PokeStar Studios, where even the audience is just as confused on why we're doing this. Afterwards, I can head to Castelia City, where I immediately head to the Battle Company. Here, I tell this ace trainer that I started with an Oshawott. You know, like a liar. I'll be getting more water Pokemon, so having an extra Mystic Water could be helpful. Through the disgusting city sewers, we can find a sweet little garden where sweet little Pokemon live. This includes the super cute Petilil, who, like every Pokemon in this challenge so far, cannot evolve any further. I name her Peony. The gym leader in Castelia is Berg, who is a total pushover. Porkchop one-hit KOs Swadloon, and against Dwebble, we send out the water-type Peta. Peta can one-hit KO with Water Pulse, but Dwebble's Sturdy keeps it alive. Hilariously, I do get the Confusion proc, and Dwebble knocks itself out. It's back to Porkchop on the final Leaveney, and one Flame Charge hits for 4 times damage, clearing the gym in record time. The team and I make our way through Route 4, which is the first area where I can't get a new encounter. I reach Joint Avenue where some super nosy businessman keeps asking my favorite phrase or whatever. I don't know, bro, it's pee-pee. Please leave me alone now. In Nimbasa, I can take on the 4th gym leader, but before that, I have a super important item to grab. Now that I've seen as many Pokemon as possible, I can receive the Eviolite. This item increases the holder's defense and special defense by 50% each, just as long as the Pokemon can still evolve. And yeah, that applies to my entire team, so this item will be absolutely crucial. The fight against Elisa will be the first actually tough gym in this game. Elisa sends out Emolga, and I send out Peony. Seems like a weird choice against the flying type here, right? Well, Peony is holding the Eviolite, which makes it super tanky, and I'm expecting Emolga to Volt Switch out here, letting me Leech Seed the next Pokemon. However, Elisa goes for Pursuit, which does nothing, so I'm free to Leech Seed Emolga. On the next turn, Elisa still doesn't go for it, allowing me to go for Sleep Powder, which misses. However, Elisa is absolutely refusing to go for a not very effective move, so I put Emolga to sleep on the next turn. And now, you can all witness the power of Eviolite Petilil. With Sleep and Eviolite, Petilil avoids taking much damage, and with Leech Seed and Giga Drain, it can slowly whittle down Emolga's damage. Elisa heals up, but we just do it again. She simply won't use Volt Switch, and this allows me to take out Emolga at almost full health. Zebstrika is out next because it knows the super effective Flame Charge, so I try to switch out, but of course it uses Pursuit. Not a huge deal, and Porkchop now comes in at full health. Now Zebstrika goes for Volt Switch, and goes into Flaffy, and a Flame Charge here does just under half damage. I could try to hit the range, but instead I go into Peony, who gets paralyzed on switch-in. Using the same Giga Drain strategy, Peony can take out Flaffy. Finally, we have to deal with this pesky zebra again. Peony is at risk to dying from Flame Charge, and it lives a Pursuit even if I switch, so I go for the switch. Unfortunately, I do get pursuited, but I live. Porkchop takes a lot of damage from Volt Switch, but responds with a Flame Charge that does great damage. Now I'm faster than Zebstrika, but because of the Citrus Berry, it doesn't look like I can guarantee a kill. I absolutely don't want Porkchop to get roasted. He's my only second stage Pokemon. So I send out Panther, whose only job is to die with grace. And actually, she hangs on, and thanks to a fun little move called Fake Out, we actually get some free damage on Strika. That's the end of the road for Panther though, but it does give us a safe switch in. Peta can live most Volt Switch rolls, and kills with Water Pulse. However, Zebstrika hits the range here, and now all of my Pokemon are slower than Zebstrika, and all go down to a Volt Switch. However, I did equip Pimento with the Bright Powder, so my win condition is a Bright Powder miss. Volt Switch actually misses, but then so does Hyperfang. Out of some miracle of a miscalculation, Volt Switch actually keeps Pimento alive, allowing him to miss Hyper Fang again. I mean, what are the odds? It's 1%. Zebstrika now outspeeds and kills my entire team, forcing me to reset the entire run. That's truly some abysmally bad luck. So now, I run the game back. The only major difference is the Cloud9 ability on this Psyduck. I defeat Charon, Roxy, and Berg just like before. Now, I just have to figure out a more consistent way to beat Elisa. Here's what I decide to do. Rather than keeping the move Synthesis on Petalil, I've kept the move Growth. Now that I know Emolga will stay in this fight and let me Leech Seed and put it to sleep, I can start setting up with Growth. This increases my special attack by 1 stage, and when I get to +3, I go for Giga Drain. This move does way more damage, and also brings me back to full health. Giga Drain is now basically my Synthesis too. Zebstrika and its fire move come out next, and I decide to stay in and see how much it actually does. It just goes for Pursuit though, and even though it gets a crit, I don't care, because Giga Drain just gets it all back. Finally, Elisa does go for Flame Charge, but I'm totally safe. And one final Giga Drain takes out Elisa's ace. At +3, Flaffy is a one-hit KO as well, and we go from a complete whiteout on attempt 1 to a win with everyone at full health. I think I've created a monster of a Pokemon, but it's just so darn cute. North of Nimbasa sits Route 16, and just north of that is the Lost Lorn Forest. We can get an encounter here, but there's actually a few P Pokemon available. One of them is Pinsir, who we can find later in the run, so we want to avoid it. By forcing a Shaking Grass encounter, we can get one of 3 Pokemon: Pansage, Pansear, or Panpour. It's completely random which one we get, and honestly, they aren't gonna be too helpful at this point, since they also can't evolve. After shaking some grass, the first one I see is Pansear, so Pyro joins the squad. This Fire-type monkey is by far the least helpful against the Ground-type gym leader Clay. Thankfully, I don't really need much help, since I have the god Peony. I start with a Growth as Krokorok prevents me from using the same move twice in a row. That's totally fine, because +1 special attack is enough to knock out the Gator in 1 hit. Sandslash is out next, and I can 1-hit KO, but I am tormented. Tormented from all the ghosts of the Pokemon this plant has murdered. Instead, I go for Sleep Powder, and actually decide to go for another Growth too. But it's not for Sandslash, I can easily take it out. The extra Growth is for Clay's final Pokemon, Excadrill, which is neutral against grass moves. Even this strong Pokemon can't two-shot, but it's time for him to take a nap. At +2 special attack, Giga Drain will be a 2-hit KO, even with the Citrus Berry. Because of Torment, I do have to waste a turn using Growth, but it doesn't matter what Excadrill does, because Peony can take it out with one final Giga Drain. Who needs fully evolved Pokemon anyway? It's time to traverse through the Chargestone Cave, where one of the first trainers has an Emolga. But this one is scarier than Elisa's Emolga, because this one knows the move Acrobatics, an extremely strong flying type move. This makes Peony, who could totally handle the Emolga before, extremely susceptible. The problem is that everyone on my team is weak to Emolga's moves, or weak in general. Unfortunately, Panther had to be sacrificed, so I didn't wipe to this fight. All things considered, not a huge deal. What is a huge deal though, is the encounter I can get in the Chargestone Cave. This would be Nosepass, which when evolved in an electric field, like the one pulsing through this cave, Nosepass evolves into Probopass. His name is Papa because, I mean, look at him. Enormous daddy vibes. My new dad will be a huge help against the next gym leader Skyla and her flying type Pokemon. Not only does Papa have the type advantage, but she has insane defensive stats. She can tank moves so well, but she is fairly slow. Thankfully, she does know Thunder Wave, which can now help her move before Skyla's Pokemon. She also learns another helpful move in Sandstorm, but we'll see why this is helpful later. Papa uses Power Gem, but it doesn't quite knock out Swoobat. Thankfully, the chip damage from Sandstorm does. However, this was just luck. And the real benefit from Sandstorm is clear on Skyla's next Pokemon, Swanna. Sandstorm boosts the special defense of rock Pokemon by 50%, which allows Papa to more easily tank Bubble Beam from Swanna. Papa also knows Discharge, which is 4 times effective and, thanks to the magnet it's holding, takes out Swanna in one hit. Finally, we see Skarmory. Papa is safe to all the moves here, but Discharge can't quite one-hit KO. When Skyla heals up, we paralyze it, and quickly take its health back down. Even with the boost from Agility, Papa still outspeeds, and we finish the fight, getting the 6th badge. Bianca and I work our way through Reversal Mountain, I destroy my rival in Undella Town, and then on Route 13 I can get my next encounter. This would be Pelipper, who I catch and try to name Pecker, but this is offensive. Listen, game. I'm not British, so this isn't offensive to me. Just because I'm doing the P challenge doesn't mean your mind has to be in the gutter. Instead, I name it something relevant to birds and doesn't sound like a euphemism at all. Preen. In Lacunosa Town, I have to take on Zinzalin in a double battle with Dumbass. And to take out his ice type, I decide to bring a fire Pokemon. But because of Golbat, I wanted to avoid the fighting type Pignite. Golbat gets an acrobatics crit on Pyro, which is unlucky, but ultimately, Pyro wasn't a key team member. I can catch another Pokemon on Route 12, and that would be Pinsir, who I name Pinchy. I don't think I've ever used Pinsir in a Nuzlocke before, so I'm excited to see what this big physical attacker can do. Speaking of physical attackers, I can also catch a Poniard on Route 9. It won't be evolving into Bisharp, but with the Eviolite and its steel typing, this Pokemon will still be really good. To prep for the 7th gym, I spend almost my entire life savings to buy the TM for Blizzard. Drayden has dragon types, and with no access to dragon moves, Preen the Pelipper will be doing the heavy lifting. Blizzard is only 70% accurate, but Preen lands the first one, and thanks to the bright powder it's holding, dodges the Drudigan's Crunch. None of my more accurate moves can kill here, so I go for Blizzard again, which lands to take out Drudigan. Flygon is out next, who is 4 times weak to ice moves, but it is faster than Pelipper. I have a small chance of dying to a high roll crit, but I decide to take the risk. It doesn't crit, and I land the next Blizzard to remove Flygon from the earth. Finally, Drayden reveals his ace, Haxorus. Haxorus sees a kill on Preen, so I switch into my tanky lady, Papa. I knew this would be a bit of a back and forth, so I gave Papa the leftovers. Haxorus begins with a Dragon Dance, but I still want to slow it down, so I begin with a Thunder Wave. Now I outspeed, and Power Gem does a decent amount of damage. Drayden goes for Dragon Dance yet again, but even at +2 attack, I'm still safe. I get a full para, which is awesome, and Power Gem gets Haxorus below half health, proccing its Citrus Berry. This means I still need 2 more Power Gems. Even paralyzed, Haxorus is faster than me now, and it goes for a super scary D-Dance to get up to +3 attack. Now, Dragon Tail crit will kill Papa, but I just need to get one final attack off. Here's the wonderful thing about Dragon Tail though. It has decreased priority, meaning I'm safe to use Power Gem before Haxorus even moves, taking it out and getting the 7th badge after a really solid fight. A quick jaunt through the Marine Tube and we're in Humalau City, where we can immediately take on the final gym leader, Marlin. He starts with Caracosta, and of course, I send out Peony. This turtle is 4 times weak to grass, but it does have the ability Sturdy, which prevents it from being one-shot. So, as Caracosta lowers its defenses to raise its attacks and speed, I use Leech Seed, which breaks the Sturdy on Caracosta. With its attack raised, Crunch does a lot of damage. It thankfully doesn't crit, but does get a defense drop. At least I can get most of my health back with Giga Drain, which takes out Caracosta and brings out Wailord. I switch into Papa as Marlin raises Wailord's special defense, which is an issue since Papa only knows special attacks. It goes for the move again, and I paralyze it. I switch back to Peony on what I assume will be a Scald, but Marlin instead goes for Bounce, a 2-turn move that would be devastating for Peony. However, because I know it's coming, I can easily switch back to Papa. Bounce only has 5 PP, and I can PP stall Bounce by switching around. I also have Leech Seed going since it actually does more damage than my attacks. Wailord also has insane HP, so Leech Seed gives back a hilarious amount of health. Once it's out of bounces, I can plant Peony in battle, using growth and soaking up passive damage until Wailord dies. Jellicent is out last, and Eviolite Peony is safe to all of its attacks. At +3 special attack, Giga Drain does a lot of damage, and I can take one more hit and then finish the fight. It was a bit trickier than I expected, but now I have all 8 gym badges and didn't lose a single Pokemon to a gym leader. Now I can get my final encounter of the run, which is located in the giant chasm. That would be Piloswine, who I name Plop. And yeah, you guessed it, also can't evolve. Out of the 12 encounters in this run, only 3 are at their final evolution, and 1 is a single stage Pokemon. The giant chasm leads us to the final Team Plasma fights in the game, including another run-in with Zinzalin. Against his Cryogonal, Papa got frozen and then stayed frozen for 7 turns, before hitting itself in confusion, but it still lived that long. The actual hard fight in this section is the one against Getsis. Papa can outlast Kofagrigus, Eviolite Petalil dunks on Seismitoad, and Electros is annoying, but Papa does take it out. Papa needs to worry about ground moves, but it gives a perfectly safe switch into Preen, and Pelipper wins the 1v1 with Drapion. Hydreigon is scary, but even low health Probopass is safe to come in. Papa paralyzes it, and then Pinchy sees his first real action by superpowering the Dark type, and we just have Toxicroak left. Unfortunately, this thing is a real pain in my side, and nobody on the team takes its moves very well. I decide to stay in and risk crit, which doesn't happen, but I do get poisoned. Before Pinchy can make a real impact on the team, he's gone forever. Plop can come in and close out the fight, but Pinsir would be a great option for the Elite Four. So this just got a lot harder. Speaking of the Elite Four, it's time to start prepping, and this is the team that I decided on. Full disclosure, I did do some EV training, so many of these guys have slightly boosted stats. I realized that in order for me to have a legitimate chance at winning this, EV training was a must. Remember, I'm using mostly unevolved Pokemon here. In Black and White 2, you can challenge the Elite Four members in whatever order you want to. So I go with the easiest fight first, which means I'll be taking on Grimsley to start. His team is made up of Dark-type Pokemon, including Liepard, and I send out my Dark-type as well, Passant, who is equipped with the Eviolite for maximum tankiness. Grimsley begins with a Fake Out, and there's nothing I can do about that. But on the second turn, I take basically no damage from Liepard, and begin my Swords Dance setup. Unfortunately, my Poniard is the opposite gender as Liepard, so I do have to deal with attraction nonsense. Thankfully, I'm able to get to +6 attack without becoming immobilized, and can even attack with Iron Head completely cleanly. Scrafty is out next because it knows a fighting type move, which will deal enough damage to kill Poniard and probably all the other pieces on the chessboard. Thankfully, Poniard can skip all of that by outspeeding and killing Scrafty. Crocodile is a problem though. Although my Iron Head kills it, I can't outspeed and die to Earthquake. So the Swords Dance sweep ends here, and I switch into Preen to avoid the incoming Earthquake. Preen safely takes all moves from Crocodile, and responds with a Mystic Water boosted Surf that takes out the Croc. Finally, Grimsley sends out Bisharp, seeming to gloat about the fact that he can have this Pokemon. I don't need this negativity in my life, Grimsley. Papa is my savior for this one, handling all of Bisharp's attacks with ease. I paralyze Bisharp to make it slower, and then use Earth Power twice to knock it out, and give us the victory. Second, I take on Caitlyn and her Psychic types, and once again, Eviolite Poniard is to the rescue. I begin with a Taunt, which prevents Reflect and Yawn. I begin my setup, and now literally all Musharna can do is Charge Beam, which honestly still does decent damage. After a second Charge Beam, I'm in crit range and Taunt ends. But thankfully, +4 attack is all I need for the fight, easily taking out Musharna with a Night Slash. Reuniclus is out next, and I can also outspeed and one-hit KO it. Third is Gothitelle, who meets the same fate as the others. Finally, we see Sigilyph, who is a slight problem because of its high speed stat. I'm perfectly safe though, but unfortunately, it gets a flinch. I decide to risk a crit, and Passant lives to Night Slash Sigilyph to the Shadow Realm, giving us the second Elite Four victory. Okay, here's where the fights actually get tough. Third, I decide to take on Marshall. Marshall only has one L in his name, but that's okay because I'm about to give him a second one. He begins with Throw, and I send out Peony. Storm Throw doesn't actually do that much damage, and the knowledge that it will always crit means I know roughly how much danger I'm in. I immediately put Throw to sleep and then go for Leech Seed. Now, my setup can begin. Throw does wake up as I go for growth, but I just put it to sleep on the next turn. Once I get to +3 special attack, I'm good to go, and Giga Drain kills Throw and brings me to good health. Next out is Mineshaw, who immediately goes for a bounce. Switching to Papa, like in the Marlin fight, is an option, but I opt to stay in so I don't lose my special attack boost. Mineshaw actually misses the bounce, but I miss the sleep powder, so we're all square. We do this dance again, but this time bounce hits, and it unfortunately paralyzes me. Giga Drain was a range, but it does hit, taking out Mineshaw. Conkeldurr is out third, and it goes for Bulk Up, which doesn't change the damage that Giga Drain will do. I don't get a kill, but I do survive the boosted Stone Edge, and take it out with another Giga Drain. Finally, Marshall sends out Sock, who launches a Brick Break, but I get fully paralyzed. Now, I'm at risk to a crit, but my team is very weak to fighting attacks, so I decide to risk it. I don't get crit, but I do get fully paralyzed again. Super unfortunate, especially because I wasn't able to break Sturdy with Leech Seed, so I still need to attack it twice. One team member who can survive the Brick Break is Preen. I stay in to take a Rock Slide and retaliate with Surf that does over half. I have to switch though, and Pignite can survive the incoming Stone Edge. I have to risk one more crit, but Porkchop stands tall and finishes Sock with a superpower. It was kind of a scuffed fight, but the team did well. The hardest of these 4 fights is Chantal though. Kofagrigus begins, and I send out Passant. I start with a taunt to prevent Will-O-Wisp, and begin with Swords Dance. Thanks to the Eviolite, I can hang out and get to +4 attack. When the taunt runs out, I send it, Night Slashing the Kofagrigus to death. Next out is a Golurk with Brick Break, but it's no risk since I outspeed and one-hit KO with Night Slash. And here is the reason this fight is so hard, Chandelure. This stupid lamp is so freaking fast and has amazing coverage, so nobody is safe. Passant cannot stay in, and I need to get to Preen. Even though I know a Fire Blast is incoming, that move still does a ton of damage to Preen. So, after all of this, it's time to sack the Pokemon that's least helpful against the champion. And unfortunately, that's Peony. This little shrub carried the team on its back, and it should be celebrated as a hero. Let me see some Fs in the comments for Peony the Petalil. This sacrifice gives me a safe switch to Preen, who just barely survives a Shadow Ball, and launches a Surf to Chandelure, but it barely doesn't kill. Now I have to switch to Papa, who tanks an Energy Ball, and then tanks a Fire Blast, and kills Chandelure with a Power Gem. However, the fight isn't over, and I still have to deal with Drifblim. The correct Pokemon is out, but Papa has less health than I expected. Thankfully, Drifblim can't do too much to Papa, and I paralyze it before retaliating with Power Gem, which is a 2-hit KO. Papa survives one final Thunderbolt thanks to its massive special defense, and cleans up the fight with a final Power Gem. With only one death, and a planned death at that, this was as successful as I could have hoped. Well, here it is, the final fight against the champion. Iris is one of the most difficult Pokemon champions, so let's see if these 5 Pokemon are enough to take her down. Iris begins with Hydreigon, and I send out Porkchop. It outspeeds and I pray for no crit, so I can launch an Expert Belt boosted superpower, taking out Hydreigon in one hit. I'm actually not expecting Aggron out next, but it totally works for me. Even with the attack drop from Superpower, Porkchop can do it again, and the 4 times damage takes the kill. Next out is Haxorus, and now my plan is all sorts of screwy. However, the immediate plan doesn't change. Porkchop needs to become Haxorus's meal. Because this is the champion fight, playing aggressively is smart, sacrificing Pokemon not needed for the rest of the fight in order to get safe switch-ins. Haxorus goes for Dragon Dance, and I use Ice Beam, which gets a crit, but doesn't kill because of the Focus Sash. Iris heals up, and I bring it back down to under 50% health. I just need to survive one hit, and thankfully I do. And now the scariest Pokemon on Iris's team is defeated. Lapras is also scary for me though, because no one on my team matches up well against it. I try to sack Preen, but the Bright Powder gives me some extra time, allowing me to use Fly for some free damage. Lapras takes me out on the next turn though. I send out Passant next, and his job isn't even to kill Lapras. It's just to do more damage. That's how strong this Lapras is. I'm faster, so I hit it with Iron Head and get an extremely clutch flinch. It doesn't work on the second try, but Passant still lives the Surf and actually manages to get the KO. Iris's 5th Pokemon is Druddigon, and Passant gets some damage before being taken out by Focus Blast. In comes Plop, who pretty much attended the E4 as a counter to Druddigon. We take it though, and Plop Ice Fangs Druddigon to its death. The final Pokemon is Archeops, and with one Pokemon left, we can go for damage. The super fast Archeops gets a crit with Rock Slide, but Plop barely hangs on, doing great damage with Ice Fang. Archeops takes out Plop, and now I'm down to my final Pokemon too. However, this fight is already over, because with Archeops and its defeatist ability, it can't do anything to Papa. It even misses Rock Slide because it knows the fight is over. One final Power Gem, and Iris is defeated, meaning that with only a team of Pokemon beginning with the letter P, we've beaten a Hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon White 2. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and follow me on Twitch. The link is in the description, and maybe I'll even do a letter lock live at some point. So you definitely don't want to miss out. Okay, bye.